Yeah, all good. All good. Yeah, just going for a nice, peaceful walk this arvo, and I was sort of reflecting on how in non-league football in England plays a vital role in the development of players. Sometimes we've been overlooked by professional clubs at a young age. It gives the players a chance to play competitive football and build experience uh, physically through confidence. Many non-league clubs have got some fantastic coaching staff and facilities and help nurture talent. Non-league football in England, it plays a crucial part in the country's footballing landscape. It's a proving ground for many players who they might get released from a club and rebuild their career again, or they may not have been in a pro club. They might have just gone through the non-league ranks and sort of burst on the scene. So I want to reflect on a few players that I can think of. You probably can think of others, but if I sort of reflect on my own experience, don't get me wrong as well, and this is probably another story for another day. There are players who've played at the highest level professionally who do go into non-league as well. We've seen players like David May, who Brent Peters at Baker Borough got David May to play for Baker, and some players who'd been at the highest level like Felgate and Ben Thornley as well. So we have seen players who've been at the very top play non-league. I mentioned those players because obviously Baker Borough, the club I've worked for in the past, and the gaffer Brent Peters, instrumental in bringing those players across. But the focus here is more about players who perhaps have been released or perhaps have not been in the pro level. I know from my own personal experience as well, many years ago when I was working as a trainer, consultant over at, it was a personal training gym in Surrey called Lifeline, Personal Health and Fitness, and David Richardson was the owner of it, and he was the head fitness coach at the time of Crystal Palace Football Club, and he'd send me players to work with individually as well. And I remember one time he sent me a player had been released by non-league. I think the player that got released by a professional club, I went to non-league. I think he was playing at Clitheroe at the time. Carlo Nash was goalkeeper, and he was at Palace. And yeah, David Richardson, the head fitness coach at Palace, who was the owner of Lifeline, sent him across to work with me doing conditioning work. It wasn't obviously the only player who sent across to me, and I worked very closely with Dave Richardson as well. And it wasn't only footballers I worked with as well, by the way, over there. But that sort of shows, But if you get the following players that sort of come to mind, I've never met any of these players, so and I don't know any of them personally. It's just sort of from what I've heard and read. I suppose some of the most sort of famous players that we can think of are maybe the likes of a Jamie Vardy. He rose from non-league into Premier League stardom as well. He's playing, I believe, at Cremonese now in Italy. Ian Wright as well. I believe Ian Wright, who was one of Arsenal's top goal scorers, began his career at Greenwich Borough, a non-league club, after he got released from Charlton, I believe, as a teenager. Chris Waddle as well. He was another player in non-league with Chris Waddle. I remember watching Chris Waddle on TV, Italia 90, the World Cup. It's really, really talented, tricky winger, so to speak. Dion Dublin as well, I'm sure he had a stint in non-league at Cambridge, I think it was, Cambridge City as well. Stuart Pearce as well, I believe, began his career in non-league as well. I think it might have been Wellston. I stand corrected. But I believe that might be where he sort of began his career, and he obviously rose through the ranks and would end up playing for Forest and was a stalwart for England too. Chris Smalling as well. It was reported that he played non-league as well. Obviously, Chris Smalling was a regular for United, and he went out to Italy to play as well. He had, I think, England caps as well. But he played for Maidstone, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, I mean, there are sort of players out there. There's just a few I can think of off the top of my head, to be fair. You know, I don't know any of them in terms of personally, so I sort of can't comment on the details. It's just sort of from my own reading and learning of other people. But I suppose the whole point being is that, you know, that non-league football in England has been a starting point for numerous players who later achieved greatness professionally. And it shows that there's a lot of football talent at all levels. And I suppose sometimes clubs, professional clubs for me, they look far and wide and abroad. But I think for me, there's loads of players in the non-league, given the opportunity and the chance, they could make it. I mean, I see players sometimes that, you know, some of the professional clubs will bring in from abroad. And you think, you know what, there are players that are equal, if not better, in the non-league. That's in my opinion, that's for sure. So the non-league, you know, it thrives. And if you look at the game, I watched the game last night on TV. I watched it on TNT Sports, the Macclesfield versus Brentford, and Macclesfield ran Brentford close. You know, it was 1-0 in the end, but you know they knocked out Palace in the FA Cup and ran Brentford close, another Premiership team. So it sort of shows, you know, so there is sort of hope and opportunities for aspiring players out there. You know, I think the important thing is to enjoy the game, but there is the opportunity. You know, you just never know, really, to be fair. There is a lot of talent in non-league football, but well, no, I'm wondering what you're watching. What's your take on it? You know, please feel free to share any players that you can think of as well that may have sort of had a stint in non-league before making it big. Maybe you'd like to share as well what your thoughts are.